The basement door was slightly ajar, and through that sliver of space I heard my husband laugh. The kind of laugh I hadn't heard in months. Low, intimate, unguarded. The kind of laugh that used to be mine. I stood frozen on Keisha's driveway, my scrub still damp with hospital sweat. A bottle of wine meant for our anniversary dinner dangling from my hand. Marcus's car was parked at an angle, hasty, like he'd been in a rush. My heart hammered against my ribs so hard I thought it might crack through bone. "You're terrible." Keisha's voice floated through the crack, playful, breathy. I recognized that tone. I'd used it myself once, back when my marriage felt like something worth whispering about. I should have stormed in. Should have kicked that door open and shattered whatever fantasy they'd built in that musty basement. That's what they do in movies, right? The wronged wife, righteous and furious, catching them in the act. But I couldn't move. My legs had turned to concrete, my lungs to stone. "You know Terrence won't be back until Thursday," Marcus said, and something in his voice, that casualness, that comfort, told me this wasn't the first time. This wasn't some drunken mistake or moment of weakness. This was routine. This was planned. "And Jazz?" Keisha asked. Even through my shock, I caught the edge in her voice when she said my name, like I was an inconvenience, a schedule to work around. "Night shift until 6 a.m., Marcus replied. "We've got time. We've got time." Those 3 words snapped something inside me. Not into rage, not yet. Into something colder, sharper. I took one step back, then another, moving on autopilot. The wine bottle slipped from my fingers and I caught it just before it hit the concrete, my nurse's reflexes kicking in even as my world collapsed. I made it to my car without breathing. Sat in the driver's seat without starting the engine. My hands were shaking so violently I had to grip the steering wheel just to hold them still. Through Keisha's basement window, I could see shadows moving. 2 bodies close together, and I forced myself to look away before I saw something I could never unsee. 12 years. 12 years of marriage, of covering extra shifts so we could save for our dream house, of missing family dinners and birthday parties and my own sister's wedding rehearsal because the ER was short-staffed. 12 years of coming home exhausted to a husband who'd started looking at me like I was a stranger who happened to share his bed. And this is what I got. My husband and our neighbor, in her basement, while her husband worked out of state, and I saved lives at Grady Memorial. I started the car, put it in reverse, drove away from that house like I was driving away from my entire life. Because in a way, I was. The Jazz who'd parked on that street 20 minutes ago, the one who'd been excited about a rare early shift ending, about surprising her husband with his favorite wine, about maybe finally reconnecting after months of distance. She was gone. The woman driving away was someone new. Someone colder. Someone who understood, with perfect clarity, that she was done being invisible. Before we continue, I want to know, where are you watching this from? What city are you in right now? Drop it in the comments below. I don't remember the drive to Monica's apartment. One moment I was pulling away from Keisha's driveway, and the next I was sitting in my sister's parking lot in Midtown, staring at my hands still gripped around the steering wheel like they were the only thing keeping me tethered to reality. My phone had been buzzing for the past 15 minutes. Marcus. 3 missed calls, 2 text messages, probably wondering where I was, why I wasn't at work like I was supposed to be. The irony wasn't lost on me. He'd built his whole affair schedule around my shifts, around the predictable patterns of my life. Night shift until 6 a.m. He'd said it so confidently, like he had my entire existence memorized and filed away for his convenience. I grabbed my phone and turned it off completely. The screen went black, and for a moment, I saw my reflection in it. Hollow eyes, tight jaw, a stranger wearing my face. Monica's building was one of those renovated historic properties in the old 4th Ward, all exposed brick and industrial windows. She'd moved here 3 years ago after her divorce, said she needed to be closer to her work at the Women's Advocacy Center. At the time, I'd thought she was running away from her failed marriage. Now I wondered if she'd just been running toward something better. I made it to her door on autopilot, knocked twice before my knees started to buckle. Monica opened the door in her weekend clothes, Howard University sweatshirt and yoga pants, her braids piled on top of her head. Her smile dropped the second she saw me. "Jazz, what?" She didn't finish the question. Just grabbed my arm and pulled me inside, kicking the door shut behind us. I opened my mouth to speak and nothing came out. Not words, not sound, just this horrible choking noise that didn't seem human. Monica guided me to her couch, sat me down, disappeared into the kitchen, and came back with a glass of water I couldn't hold steady enough to drink. "Breathe," she said, her lawyer voice cutting through the fog. "Jazz, breathe with me. In for 4, hold for 4, out for 4. I tried. Failed. Tried again. On the third attempt, my lungs remembered how to function. "It's Marcus," I finally managed, and saying his name out loud made it real in a way it hadn't been before. "I saw him. With Keisha. Our neighbor Keisha." Monica went very still, that particular kind of stillness that comes right before the storm. "Saw him how?" So I told her, all of it. The early end to my shift, a rarity since we'd been short-staffed for months. The decision to surprise Marcus with dinner, to try to bridge the gap that had been growing between us like kudzu, silent and strangling. The drive home, the unexpected sight of his car at Keisha's house. The basement door, the voices, his laugh. "We've got time," I repeated, and my voice cracked on the last word. That's what he said. Like I'm just a schedule to work around. Like our marriage is just an obstacle to his real life. Monica's jaw was so tight I could see the muscle jumping beneath her skin. She'd warned me, hadn't she? 6 months ago, when I'd mentioned how distant Marcus had become, how he'd started picking fights about my work schedule, about how I was never home, about how he felt like he had a roommate instead of a wife. Monica had looked at me with those sharp lawyer eyes and said, "Don't let him make his neglect your fault." But I had. I'd taken extra shifts to avoid the tension at home, told myself that if I just worked harder, saved more money, proved that I was contributing, things would get better, that we'd get back to who we used to be. The couple who'd met at a Morehouse Spellman mixer, who'd talked until sunrise about building a life together, who'd promised each other that we'd be different from all the failed marriages in our families. "How long do you think it's been going on?" Monica asked, her voice carefully controlled. "I don't know." The admission felt like swallowing glass. Could be weeks. Could be months. He knows my schedule better than I do. Every Thursday I work night shift. Every other Saturday I cover the 12-hour. He's had a roadmap. Monica stood up and started pacing, her mind already working through angles and options. This was what she did. Took broken situations and found the leverage points, the places where power could shift. I'd seen her do it for dozens of clients at the Women's Advocacy Center, helping women extract themselves from marriages that had turned toxic, from situations where they'd been made to feel small and disposable. I'd never imagined I'd need her to do it for me. "And Keisha's husband?" Monica asked. "Terrence? Where is he?" "Works in Alabama most of the time. Civil engineering. He's gone 3-4 days a week." I pressed my palms against my eyes, trying to stop the room from spinning. God, Monica. They planned this. They're not just cheating, they have a system. Does Terrence know? I have no idea. I barely know him. We've only been neighbors for 6 months, and he's hardly ever around. I dropped my hands and looked at my sister. "What do I do?" Monica stopped pacing and came to kneel in front of me, taking my hands in hers. Her skin was warm, steady, real. "First thing you do?" "Nothing." "What?" "You heard me. Nothing. No confrontation, no crying, no dramatic scene. You go home. You act normal, and you give yourself time to think clearly." She squeezed my hands. "I know every instinct in your body is screaming to blow everything up right now. But trust me, Jazz, the woman who acts on emotion loses. The woman who acts on strategy wins. I don't want to play games, Monica. I just want—" My voice broke. "I just want my husband back. I want this to not be real. I know, baby. I know." She pulled me into a hug, and for the first time since I'd heard Marcus's laugh through that basement door, I let myself fall apart, sobbed into my sister's shoulder like I was 12 years old again, like she could fix this the way she used to fix everything when we were kids. But we weren't kids anymore. And some things once broken don't get fixed. They get rebuilt into something entirely different, or they get thrown away. When I finally pulled back, Monica's eyes were fierce. You're not the woman who gets played, Jazz. You're the woman who saves lives, who shows up when everyone else is falling apart, who keeps her head in a crisis. She gripped my shoulders. So that's what you're going to do now. Keep your head, be strategic, and make sure that when this is over, you're the one standing tall. I wiped my face with the back of my hand, tasted salt and snot, and the bitter flavor of betrayal. How? Monica smiled, and it wasn't a kind smile. It was the smile she wore in court when she knew she had the winning move. We document everything, build a case, and we make sure Marcus and Keisha understand exactly what they've lost. I nodded slowly. Somewhere beneath the shock and pain, something else was stirring. Something cold and clear and calculating. Marcus thought he knew me. Thought I was the exhausted wife who'd be too busy to notice, too tired to fight back. He'd built his affair on the foundation of my predictability, my dedication, my habit of putting everyone else first. He was about to learn he'd miscalculated. The drive back home felt like driving toward a firing squad. Every red light was a reprieve. Every green light a countdown to the performance of my life. Monica had made me promise. No confrontation, no tears, business as usual. You're an ER nurse, she'd said as I left her apartment. You've kept your composure while people were dying in front of you. This is just another shift. Except it wasn't. In the ER, I knew the protocols, knew exactly what to do when someone's heart stopped, when blood pressure dropped, when a patient coded. There was no protocol for this, no checklist for how to walk into your own. Home and pretend you didn't know your husband was sleeping with the woman who'd brought over banana bread last month, pulled into our driveway at 8:15. The house looked exactly as it always did. Neat lawn that Marcus obsessed over. The blue shutters I'd picked out 3 years ago. The ceramic owl on the porch that his mother had given us as a housewarming gift. Everything perfectly normal. Everything a lie. Marcus's car was already there. Of course it was. He'd probably rushed home from Keisha's basement, showered away the evidence, settled onto the couch with a beer like he'd been there all evening. I sat in my car for a full minute, practicing my face in the rearview mirror. Tired but not devastated. Normal end of shift exhausted. I'd done this thousands of times. Walked through that door after 12 hours of chaos. My body running on muscle memory and determination. I could do it one more time. The key turned in the lock with its familiar click. I pushed open the door. Marcus was exactly where I'd pictured him, sprawled on our leather sectional, remote in hand, watching SportsCenter. He looked up when I entered, and for a split second, something flickered across his face. Guilt, fear, but it vanished so quickly I might have imagined it. "Hey, babe," he said, his voice carefully casual. "Thought you had shift until 6 a.m.? This was it. The first test. I set my bag down by the door, slipped off my shoes. Got cut early. We were overstaffed for once." The lie came easier than I expected. Figured I'd surprise you with dinner, but I wasn't feeling great, so I just grabbed something and went for a drive to clear my head. I watched him process this. Watched him calculate whether my timeline matched his alibi. His shoulders relaxed slightly. "You feeling okay? You look tired." "I'm fine." I moved toward the kitchen, needing distance between us before my carefully constructed mask cracked. "Long week. You know how it is?" "Yeah." He turned back to the TV, and just like that, the moment passed. He'd accepted my lie because he needed it to be true. Because if I'd come home early and didn't know about Keisha, then he was safe. His secret was still safe. I stood at the kitchen sink, running water I didn't need, gripping the counter until my knuckles went white. Through the pass-through window, I could see the back of his head, the way he sat with one arm stretched across the back of the couch. The same couch where we'd planned our future, where we'd laughed about baby names we'd give our kids someday, where I'd fallen asleep against his chest 1,000 times feeling like the luckiest woman alive. When had that changed? When had I become someone he needed to schedule around? I thought about the past 6 months, reframing every memory through this new, horrible lens. The nights he'd encouraged me to pick up extra shifts. "We need the money, babe. And you're so good at what you do." The sudden interest in our neighbors after Keisha and Terrence moved in. "We should be friendlier. Make them feel welcome." The way he'd stopped complaining about my schedule right around the time Terrence started traveling for work. He'd groomed the situation like a gardener preparing soil. And I'd been too exhausted, too focused on saving other people's lives, to notice that my own marriage was bleeding out. "You want to watch something together?" Marcus called from the living room, his tone almost hopeful, like he was the neglected spouse trying to reconnect. The audacity of it nearly broke me. But I thought of Monica's words. "The woman who acts on emotion loses," and forced myself to breathe. "Maybe later," I said, my voice steady. "I need to shower first. I smell like hospital." "All right." He didn't argue, didn't insist. Probably relieved to have more time before he had to perform concerned husband. The bathroom was my sanctuary. I locked the door, turned on the shower hot enough to scald, and finally let myself feel it. The betrayal crashed over me in waves. Not the Hollywood version with throwing dishes and screaming matches, but something quieter and more devastating. The death of trust. The murder of the future I'd imagined. I thought about every time I'd defended him to Monica when she'd raised concerns. "He's just stressed about work," I'd said. "Marriage takes effort from both sides," I'd insisted. All while he was building a second life with our neighbor, using my dedication against me, treating my absence as an invitation. The water went cold before I got out. I dried off mechanically, put on the old Howard sweatshirt I'd stolen from Monica years ago, and stared at myself in the fogged mirror. My eyes looked different, harder somehow, like something essential had calcified. When I emerged, Marcus had moved to the bedroom. He was already under the covers, scrolling through his phone. Our bed, the place where we'd made love, made promises, made plans. Now just another stage for his performance. "Feeling better?" he asked, not looking up from his screen. "Yeah." I climbed in on my side, maintaining the careful distance that had become normal between us. "Hey, Marcus." He glanced over. When's the last time we did something together? Like actually spent time as a couple?" Something shifted in his expression. Defensiveness mixed with something that might have been shame. "I don't know. Things have been busy. Your schedule's been crazy." "My schedule," I repeated softly. "Right. I'm not saying it's your fault," he said quickly, already backpedaling. "Just that it's been hard to coordinate. But we should plan something. Maybe next month when things calm down?" "Next month. After however many more Thursdays in Keisha's basement. After however many more lies." "Sure," I said. "That sounds good." He seemed satisfied with this, like we'd solved something. Went back to his phone while I lay there in the dark, listening to him breathe, wondering if this was what dying felt like. Your heart still beating, your lungs still working, but everything that made you slowly shutting down. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. A text from Monica. "You good?" I typed back with one hand under the covers. "I'm acting. Like you said. Good. Tomorrow we start documenting. Tonight you rest. How am I supposed to rest?" 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Then, the same way you rest between traumas in the ER, you save your energy for what's coming next. She was right. In the emergency room, you didn't process every tragedy in real time. You compartmentalized, focused on the next patient, the next crisis. You felt it later, in the car or the shower, or 3 months down the line when something small triggered the flood. I could do this. I'd been training for this my entire nursing career without knowing it. Next to me, Marcus's breathing had deepened into sleep. How easy it was for him. Betray his wife, then sleep like a baby. No nightmares, no guilt keeping him awake. I turned on my side, facing away from him, and stared at the wall. Tomorrow I'd go back to work, save lives, come home and play the role of oblivious wife. I'd build my case brick by brick, document by document, until I had everything I needed. But tonight, in the dark, I let myself mourn the marriage I'd thought I had. The man I'd thought he was, the future that had died in Keisha's basement while I held a bottle of anniversary wine. Tomorrow, Jazz the strategist would wake up. But tonight, I was just a woman whose heart had been shattered by the person who'd promised to protect it. And that woman cried silently into her pillow until exhaustion finally pulled her under. The next 2 weeks were a masterclass in pretending. I smiled when I was supposed to smile, laughed when Marcus made his terrible dad jokes, asked about his day like I actually cared about the answer. And all the while I watched, I documented. I became a detective in my own home. Monica had given me a list during our second meeting at her apartment. "Think like a lawyer building a case," she'd said, sliding a yellow legal pad across her coffee table. Dates, times, inconsistencies, screenshots of texts, credit card statements, anything that doesn't add up. I'd started with his phone, not by snooping. I wasn't ready for that level of invasion yet, wasn't sure I could handle what I'd find, but by observing his behavior with it. The way he'd started taking it to the bathroom, how he'd angled the screen away from me when we sat together, the new passcode he'd added 3 months ago, claiming it was for work security. 3 months, right around when Keisha and Terrence had moved in next door. I started keeping a journal, documenting everything in the Notes app on my phone under a contact labeled Dr. Morrison, my made-up therapist. Every Thursday when I worked night shift, I'd note what time Marcus said he'd be home versus when he actually arrived. The scratches I'd found on his back 2 weeks ago that he'd blamed on yard work, the receipt from a wine bar in Virginia Highland that had appeared on our credit card statement, a place we'd never been together. "This is good," Monica had said when I showed her my notes during our standing Tuesday coffee meetings. We'd started those, sisters catching up, totally normal, nothing suspicious. But we need more. We need proof he can't explain away. Like what? Like catching them together, multiple times, establishing a pattern. She'd stirred her latte thoughtfully. "What about Terrence? Have you considered bringing him in on this?" The question had been haunting me. Terrence Brown, tall, serious, with kind eyes and a warm smile on the rare occasions I'd seen him. He worked in Alabama most weeks, came home on weekends, sometimes not even that. Did he know? Did he suspect? Or was he as blindly trusting as I'd been? "I don't know him well enough," I'd said. "What if he's the type who'd warn Marcus? Or what if he already knows and doesn't care?" Monica had given me that look, the one that said I was being naive. Jazz men like Terrence, they care. Trust me. I've worked with enough betrayed spouses to know. The question is whether he'll be an asset or a liability. I'd left that meeting with a new mission. Get to know Terrence Brown. The opportunity came on a Saturday morning when I wasn't scheduled at the hospital. I was in the driveway washing my car, something I never did, but desperate times called for desperate measures, when Terrence pulled up next door. His truck was one of those heavy-duty Ford F-250s, covered in road dust from the drive back from Alabama. He climbed out slowly, stretching his back like the drive had been long. When he saw me, he raised a hand in greeting. "Morning, Jazz. You're making the rest of us look bad." He gestured at his own dusty truck with a tired smile. "Just killing time before my shift," I called back, forcing brightness into my voice. "Welcome home. How was the drive?" "Long." He grabbed a duffel bag from the truck bed. "Always is, but at least I get a couple days at home before heading back out. A couple days, Thursday through Sunday usually, which meant Monday through Wednesday, Keisha was alone. And I worked night shifts on Thursdays. Must be hard on Keisha," I said carefully, wringing out my sponge, being alone so much. Something flickered across his face. Was it suspicion or just exhaustion? "Yeah, well, the job pays well. We're saving for a bigger place, maybe starting a family soon." He said it like he was trying to convince himself. "She understands, does she?" I wanted to ask. "Does she understand, or does she just have plenty of time to entertain my husband while you're gone?" "That's great," I said instead. "Family's important. Marcus and I keep saying we need to make more time for each other. Work gets in the way, you know." Terrence nodded, but his eyes had gone distant. "Yeah, I know." He hefted his bag higher on his shoulder. "I should get inside. Keisha's probably wondering where I am." I bet she is, I thought, probably scrambling to erase any evidence of Marcus. "Hey, Terrence?" I called before he could reach his door. He turned back. "If you and Keisha ever want to grab dinner or something double date, let us know. We should do that before you head back out." He studied me for a moment, and I wondered if he could see through me, if my performance wasn't as good as I thought. But then he smiled, tired but genuine. "That'd be nice. I'll mention it to Keisha." I watched him disappear into his house, then finished washing my car with shaking hands. That small interaction had taken everything I had. The casual tone, the friendly suggestion, all while knowing that his wife and my husband were probably texting right now, coordinating their next rendezvous. Inside my own house, Marcus was in his office, the spare bedroom he'd converted last year, claiming he needed space to work from home sometimes. I'd thought it was practical. Now I wondered what else he did in there with the door locked. I found him at his desk, laptop open, but he'd minimized whatever he'd been looking at the second I appeared in the doorway. "Car all clean?" he asked too quickly. Squeaky. I leaned against the doorframe, studying him. He'd gotten a haircut recently, fresh fade, beard trimmed neat. He was wearing cologne on a Saturday morning at home. For who? Ran into Terrence outside. Mentioned maybe doing a double-date dinner before he leaves again. Marcus's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "That's nice of you, but you know how crazy your schedule is. Probably won't work out. I could make it work if you wanted to." I kept my voice light, curious. "Don't you like them? I thought you and Terrence hit it off. I barely know the guy. He's never around." Marcus turned back to his laptop. "And honestly, I'm not really in the mood for couple friends right now. Too much pressure to be on, you know? Too much pressure to sit across from the husband of the woman you're sleeping with, more like." "Sure," I said. "Just a thought." I retreated to the kitchen, pulled out my phone, opened my Dr. Morrison notes. Saturday, 10:47 a.m. Suggested double date with Keisha and Terrence. Marcus immediately shut it down. Claimed Terrence is never around, ironic, and that couple friends are too much pressure. He got a fresh haircut and is wearing cologne at home on a Saturday. Terrence just returned from Alabama. Timeline: M knows T is home this weekend, which means no access to K. Is this why M seems tense? My phone buzzed with a text from Monica. "Any updates?" I typed back, "Talk to Terrence. He seems clueless but tired. Mentioned starting a family with K3 dots appeared immediately." Oof, that's messy. "You thinking of telling him?" "Not yet. Want more proof first." "But Monica? I think I need to check him's phone. Can you get his passcode?" I thought about it. Marcus had always been predictable with passwords, birthdays, anniversaries, combinations of meaningful numbers. His new passcode had gone in 3 months ago, right when everything changed. "I can try," I typed. "What's the worst that could happen? He catches you and knows you're onto him. Then you lose the element of surprise." She was right. Everything depended on Marcus thinking he was safe, that I was still the oblivious wife working her night shifts while he lived his double life. "I'll be careful." I sent back Jazz. "Seriously, don't do anything stupid. We're building a case, not playing detective in a thriller movie." But that's exactly what this felt like. A thriller where I was both the victim and the investigator, trying to solve a crime being committed against me in real time. That night, after Marcus fell asleep, I lay awake listening to him breathe. His phone sat on his nightstand, just 2 feet away. It would be so easy to reach over. Try a few combinations. His birthday. Mine. Our anniversary. Keisha's birthday. Did I even know Keisha's birthday? My hand moved toward the nightstand. Stopped. Monica's voice in my head. "Don't lose the element of surprise." I pulled my hand back, forced myself to breathe. Patience. This wasn't the ER where seconds mattered, where you had to act fast or lose the patient. This was different. This required the long game. But God, the waiting was killing me. Every day I pretended was another day they got away with it. Another day Marcus looked me in the eye and lied. Another day I had to sleep next to someone who'd chosen someone else. I turned away from him, curled into myself, and did what I'd been doing every night for 2 weeks. Counted down the hours until morning when I could put my mask back on and keep playing the role of the wife who didn't know her world had already ended. The breaking point came on a Thursday night, 3 weeks after I'd discovered the affair. I was scheduled for my usual overnight shift, the one Marcus had memorized, the one that gave him his weekly window of opportunity. But the universe, or maybe just karma, had other plans. At 9 p.m., 2 hours into my shift, our charge nurse Angela pulled me aside. "Jazz, I need to send you home." My stomach dropped. "What? Why? Did I do something?" "Girl, no." Angela put a hand on my shoulder, her expression sympathetic. "We're overstaffed tonight and you've been running on fumes for weeks. I can see it. Everyone can see it. Take the night off. Doctor's orders." She smiled. "Well, charge nurse's orders, which is basically the same thing." I should have felt relieved. A rare night off, a chance to sleep in my own bed, to rest. Instead, I felt something close to panic. Thursday night, Marcus would be expecting me gone until 6 a.m., which meant, "You sure?" I tried one more time. "I can stay, really?" "Jazz." Angela's voice went firm. "Go home, that's not a request," so I went. Changed out of my scrubs in the locker room, my hands shaking as I pulled on jeans and a sweatshirt. Drove home through streets that felt surreal. I was never out at this hour on Thursdays, never saw the way the city lights reflected off the buildings downtown, never experienced the strange quiet of Atlanta at 10 p.m. on a weeknight. I called Monica from the car. "You're off shift?" She sounded confused. "It's barely 10. They sent me home, overstaffed." I gripped the steering wheel tighter. "Monica, it's Thursday night." Silence on the other end as she processed what that meant. "Then, where are you right now?" "Headed home." "Jazz, listen to me. You need to decide what you're doing before you get there. Are you confronting him? Are you playing it cool? Because if you walk in and catch them, I know." My voice came out steadier than I felt. "I know, I need to see it. I need proof that isn't just voices through a door and my own paranoia." "It's not paranoia if you're right." "I know that too." I took a breath. "But I need to be sure. Need to see it with my own eyes before I blow up my entire life." "Okay." Monica's lawyer voice kicked in. "Okay, then here's what you do. You park down the street, not in your driveway. You watch. You take pictures if you can, but only if it's safe. And Jazz, you do not go inside that basement. You do not confront them. You just document and leave. Promise me." "I promise. I'm serious. The second you confront them, you lose your advantage. They'll get better at hiding it, or worse, they'll gaslight you into thinking you're crazy. We've been building a case. Don't throw it away for one moment of satisfaction." I promised her again, then hung up as I turned onto my street. Sure enough, Marcus's car was gone from our driveway. My chest tightened. I drove past our house slowly, scanning, and there it was. His Charger parked 3 houses down, poorly hidden behind Terrence's massive truck. Amateur hour. He wasn't even trying that hard anymore. Maybe he'd gotten comfortable. Maybe he thought he was untouchable. I parked a full block away, killed my engine, and sat in the dark. The neighborhood was quiet. Just the distant sound of a dog barking and the hum of air conditioning units. Normal people living normal lives, unaware that in one of these pretty houses, 2 marriages were being destroyed. I pulled up my camera app, made sure the flash was off, then got out of the car. My heart was hammering so hard I could hear it in my ears, but my hands were steady. ER training kicking in. When the pressure's highest, your body knows what to do. The walk to Keisha's house felt endless. I stayed on the grass to muffle my footsteps, moved slowly, deliberately. There were lights on in the main house, but the basement entrance, the side door I'd heard them through before, was partially hidden by overgrown azalea bushes. Perfect cover. I crouched behind the bushes, my phone ready. The basement window was at ground level, curtains drawn but not quite closed. There was a gap, maybe 6 inches wide. Enough to see through if you were at the right angle. I positioned myself carefully, angled my phone and looked. My husband was sitting on a leather couch I didn't recognize. Keisha curled up next to him in a silk robe that left little to the imagination. They had wine glasses, red wine, the expensive kind Marcus always said we couldn't afford. Candles were lit on the coffee table, music playing softly, something R&B and intimate. It looked like a date, like a real relationship, not just an affair. That hurt worse than I'd expected. I started taking pictures, my thumb pressing the volume button over and over to silence the shutter sound. Marcus laughing at something Keisha said. Keisha's hand on his chest. Marcus pulling her closer. The kiss that followed. Deep, familiar. The kind of kiss that spoke of practice and routine. My eyes burned, but I kept shooting. This was evidence. This was proof. This was what I needed. Then Keisha stood up, held out her hand to Marcus. He took it, let her pull him up from the couch. They moved toward a door I assumed led to the bedroom part of the basement, and I realized with nauseating clarity that I was about to watch them cross a line I couldn't uncross. I lowered my phone. I had enough. More than enough. Pictures of them together, intimate, in a private setting on a night I was supposed to be at work. Time-stamped, geotagged, undeniable. I backed away from the window, staying low, my breath coming in short gasps. Made it to the sidewalk before my legs started shaking. Made it to my car before the tears started, but I didn't break down. Not yet. Instead, I sat there and opened my photos, scrolling through the evidence I'd just collected. 23 pictures in total. Some blurry, some perfect. All damning. I sent them to Monica with shaking hands. No message, just the photos. She called immediately. Jesus Christ, Jazz. I know. You okay? No. I wiped my eyes. But I have proof now. Real proof. You do. Her voice was gentle. What do you want to do? That was the question, wasn't it? I could go home, pretend I'd never come back early, keep building the case. Or I could burn it all down right now, storm into that basement and shatter their little fantasy world. But then I thought about Terrence. About the way he'd looked when he mentioned starting a family with Keisha. About how he was in Alabama right now, working to build a future with a woman who was in her basement with my husband. I want to tell Terrence, I said. Monica was quiet for a moment. You sure? He deserves to know, and I took a breath. I can't do this alone anymore, Monica. I can't keep playing pretend while my voice cracked. I need an ally, someone who understands what this feels like. Okay. I could hear her moving around, probably pacing her apartment. Okay, do you have his number? No, but I know where he works. His company's website has a directory. I was already pulling it up on my phone. I'll send him a message through LinkedIn or something. Something private. Jazz, be careful how you word it. You don't want to come off as crazy? Too late for that. I laughed, but it came out broken. I'm the woman who just crouched in bushes taking pictures of her cheating husband. Sanity left the building a while ago. You're not crazy. You're surviving! Monica's voice was fierce. And you're about to become very strategic. Send him the message. Set up a meeting somewhere public. Show him the photos. And then you two decide together how to handle this. What if he doesn't believe me? Jazz, you have 23 photos. He'll believe you. I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. Okay, I'll message him tomorrow. Where are you going to go tonight? You can't go home. Your car's supposed to be at the hospital until 6 a.m. She was right. If I went home now, Marcus would know something was wrong. My whole carefully constructed cover would collapse. I'll go to your place, I said. If that's okay? Door's unlocked. I'll make up the couch. I drove to Monica's apartment in a daze, the photos burning a hole in my phone. When I got there, she was waiting with blankets, tea, and the kind of hug that only a sister could give. The kind that said, I've got you without words. You did good tonight, she said, as she handed me a mug of chamomile. I know it doesn't feel like it, but you did. You got proof. You're taking control. I sipped the tea, let the warmth spread through my chest. It hurts more than I thought it would, seeing them like that, seeing him look at her the way he used to look at me. I know, baby. I know. I keep thinking about all the times I defended him, all the times I made excuses for why things felt off. I set down the mug before I could throw it. I feel so stupid. You're not stupid. You're trusting. There's a difference. Monica sat next to me, took my hand. And you know what? After tonight, you're also powerful. 'Cause you know the truth now. And truth is the most powerful weapon you can have. I leaned my head on her shoulder, felt the exhaustion of the past 3 weeks crash over me. What do I do tomorrow? Tomorrow you contact Terrence. You show him the evidence. You build your alliance. She squeezed my hand. And then you start planning the endgame. Because this? She gestured at my phone with all its damning photos. This is checkmate. They just don't know it yet. I sent the LinkedIn message to Terrence at 7 a.m. the next morning, sitting in Monica's kitchen with my third cup of coffee and hands that wouldn't stop shaking. Hi, Terrence. This is Jazz from next door. I know this is unusual, but I need to speak with you about something important. It's regarding our spouses. I have information I think you need to see. Would you be willing to meet for coffee this weekend? I promise I wouldn't reach out like this if it wasn't serious. I stared at the message for 10 minutes before hitting send. Monica had already left for work, trusting me to handle this on my own. You're stronger than you think, she'd said before walking out the door. You've got this. But sitting there alone, watching the message sent notification appear on my screen, I didn't feel strong. I felt like I was about to ruin someone else's life, the way mine had been ruined. Terrence didn't know me. For all he knew, I was some crazy neighbor lady with too much time on her hands and a wild imagination. My phone buzzed 30 minutes later. I nearly dropped it. Jazz, this is concerning. I'm in Alabama until Saturday. Can we meet Saturday afternoon? There's a coffee shop on Ponce de Leon, Brash Coffee. 2 p.m. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. This was it, the point of no return. Once I showed Terrence those photos, once I brought him into this nightmare, everything would change. The careful investigation would become real. The hypothetical would become concrete. That works. I'll be there. And Terrence, I'm sorry. His response came quickly. For what? I didn't answer. He'd find out soon enough. The next 2 days were excruciating. I went to work, came home, played the dutiful wife. Marcus had no idea I'd been sent home early on Thursday. No idea I'd watched him through Keisha's basement window. Friday night, he was extra attentive. Made dinner, asked about my shift, even suggested we watch a movie together. You seem different lately, he said as we sat on the couch, carefully maintaining the distance that had become normal between us. Lighter somehow, less stressed. The irony nearly made me laugh. I was lighter because I'd stopped carrying the weight of our failing marriage alone, because I'd stopped blaming myself for his distance, his dissatisfaction, his wandering. I was lighter because I'd already started letting him go. Just trying to take better care of myself, I said, which wasn't entirely a lie. You know, work-life balance and all that. He smiled, seemingly pleased with this answer, and went back to the movie. I watched him from the corner of my eye. This man I'd married, this stranger I'd been living with. Who was he? The Marcus who'd proposed to me under the cherry blossoms at Piedmont Park? Or the Marcus who lit candles in another woman's basement? Maybe he was both. Maybe that was the hardest part. Accepting that the man who'd promised to love me forever was the same man who'd been systematically lying to me for months. Saturday came with Atlanta's typical October weather, warm but not hot. The kind of day that made you remember why you lived in the South. I told Marcus I was meeting Monica for lunch and shopping. He barely looked up from his laptop. Have fun, he said absently. I'll probably work on the yard. Right, the yard. Or maybe he'd text Keisha. See if Terrence was really in Alabama like he said, plan their next rendezvous. I wondered if they had a system, code words, signals. Did she text "the coast is clear" when her husband left? Did Marcus have a secret phone I didn't know about? I pushed the thoughts away and drove to Brash Coffee, arriving 15 minutes early. The place was busy with the Saturday afternoon crowd. Young couples, students with laptops, a book club gathered in the corner. Normal people living normal lives. I ordered a latte I wouldn't drink and found a table near the back, somewhere semi-private. My phone felt like it weighed 50 pounds in my purse, loaded with evidence that would detonate 2 marriages. Terrence arrived exactly at 2 p.m. I recognized his truck pulling into the parking lot, watched him climb out and scan the coffee shop through the windows. He was wearing jeans and a flannel shirt, work boots still dusty from whatever job site he'd just come from. When he spotted me, his expression was guarded, but not hostile. Jazz. He sat down across from me, and I noticed the dark circles under his eyes, the tightness around his mouth. I've been trying to figure out what this could be about all week. I'm sorry, I said, and meant it. I wish I didn't have to show you this. I wish I was wrong. Show me what? His voice was carefully controlled, but I saw his hands tighten around his coffee cup. I pulled out my phone, opened the photo gallery I'd created specifically for this meeting, took a breath. Thursday night, I was sent home early from my shift. My car wasn't in the driveway, so Marcus didn't know I was back. I slid the phone across the table. This is what I found. Terrence looked down at the screen. I watched his face as he scrolled through the photos. Confusion giving way to recognition. Recognition to disbelief. Disbelief to something that looked like physical pain. His jaw clenched. His breathing changed, but he didn't speak, just kept scrolling, taking in every image. When he finally looked up, his eyes were red. How long? I don't know for sure. I first heard them 3 weeks ago, but based on things I've pieced together, probably since you started the Alabama job. 3, maybe 4 months. He set the phone down carefully, like it might explode. Thursdays. You work night shift on Thursdays. Yeah. And I'm in Alabama Monday through Thursday most weeks. He laughed, but there was no humor in it. They had a system. They had a system, I confirmed. We sat in silence for a moment, two strangers united by betrayal, in a coffee shop full of happy people who had no idea their worlds were intact. "I almost didn't come," Terrence said finally. "Thought maybe you were paranoid, or had some kind of grudge. Keisha and we've had problems, but I thought we were working on them. Thought she understood that the Alabama job was temporary, just until we saved enough to—" He trailed off. "She told me last month she might be pregnant. We were excited. Started talking about names. My heart broke for him. At least Marcus and I had been distant. At least I'd felt the disconnect. Terrence had been blindsided, believing in a future that his wife was actively destroying. "I'm sorry," I said again. It felt inadequate, but what else was there? "Why did you tell me?" he asked. "You could have just confronted Marcus, left me out of it. Because you deserved to know. And because—" I hesitated. "I can't do this alone. I've been pretending everything's fine for 3 weeks while I gathered evidence, and it's killing me. I thought maybe if we worked together, if we had each other's backs. You want us to take them down together. It wasn't a question. I want us to protect ourselves together," I corrected. "I want to make sure that when this ends, and it has to end, we're not the ones left looking stupid. That they understand there are consequences for what they've done." Terrence leaned back in his chair, studying me. "You're not what I expected, Jazz. When Marcus talks about you, he makes you sound like you're never around. Always at work, too busy for him. That's his narrative. Makes it easier to justify, I guess." I met his eyes. "What does Keisha say about me?" "Not much. Just that you seem nice. That Marcus deserves better than being married to someone who's never home." He shook his head. "Jesus. She was setting up the narrative too, wasn't she? Making me sympathetic to him so I wouldn't question why they were friendly." "They're good at this," I said. "That's what scares me. This isn't some impulse thing. They've been planning, coordinating, lying. Which means they'll be good at denying it too, if we confront them without proof." "What kind of proof do you have besides these photos?" I pulled out my phone and opened my Dr. Morrison notes. 3 weeks of documentation. Times, dates, inconsistencies in Marcus's stories. Credit card charges. A receipt from a wine bar I've never been to. His suddenly having a passcode on his phone. The way he angles the screen away from me. I scrolled through the entries. I've been building a case like my sister taught me. She's a lawyer. Works with domestic abuse survivors. She said evidence is everything. Terrence was quiet for a long moment. Then, "I've got Keisha's phone on our family plan. I can see her text logs. Not the content, but who she's texting and when. I never looked before because I trusted her." His voice cracked slightly on that last word. "I can look now." "That would help," I said gently. "And I've got access to our credit cards too." "Joint accounts." He pulled out his own phone. "Give me a few minutes." I watched him scroll through screens, his expression growing darker with each swipe. Finally, he turned his phone to show me. "This charge. $200 at a boutique hotel in Buckhead. 3 weeks ago, Tuesday afternoon. I was in Alabama. She told me she was at a work conference. Tuesday afternoon. I'd been at the hospital, pulling a double because someone called out sick. Marcus had texted me saying he had a late meeting, wouldn't be home until after 8. They're not just meeting in her basement," I said slowly. "They're going out. Taking trips. Like a real relationship." Terrence's voice was hollow. "Not just an affair. A whole other life." The weight of that realization settled over both of us. This wasn't just about sex, about opportunity and temptation. This was about our spouses choosing to build something with each other, while dismantling what they'd built with us. "What do you want to do?" I asked. Terrence looked at me, and I saw my own pain reflected in his eyes. "I want them to understand what they've destroyed. I want them to face consequences, and I want to make sure that when the dust settles, I'm not the one who loses everything." "Then we work together," I said. "We keep documenting, keep gathering evidence, and when we have enough, when we know they can't lie their way out of it, we blow it up," Terrence finished. "Both marriages at the same time. No chance for them to coordinate stories or blame us." I nodded. "My sister says we need to be strategic. Emotional reactions lose in court, in divorce proceedings. Cold, Calculated, documented, that wins. I can do cold. Terrence's expression hardened. I've spent the last 4 months in Alabama busting my ass to build a future for us. Slept in hotel rooms, ate takeout, missed being home because I thought I was building something. And the whole time... He didn't finish, didn't need to. We exchanged numbers, created a shared folder in the cloud for evidence, made a pact to meet weekly, to coordinate our surveillance, to support each other through the nightmare of pretending everything was fine. As we stood to leave, Terrence caught my arm. Jazz, thank you for telling me, for not letting me keep living in a lie. We deserve better than lies, I said, both of us. Driving home, I felt something I hadn't felt in weeks. Not happiness, not even satisfaction, but something close to power. I wasn't alone anymore. I had an ally who understood, who had just as much to lose, who wanted justice as much as I did. Marcus was in the yard when I pulled up, exactly where he'd said he'd be. He waved, smiling, playing the role of loving husband. I waved back, playing the role of trusting wife. But everything had changed. The game was no longer solitaire. It was chess, and we were coming for checkmate. The next 3 weeks transformed me into someone I barely recognized. By day, I was still Jazz Turner, RN, compassionate, efficient, saving lives in the Grady Memorial ER. By night, I was something else entirely. Investigator, strategist, a woman systematically documenting the destruction of her marriage with the cold precision I usually reserved for charting patient vitals. Terrence and I fell into a rhythm. We'd meet every Sunday morning at a different coffee shop, somewhere neither of our spouses would think to look. He'd show me his findings, text logs showing hundreds of messages between Marcus and Keisha, credit card charges that told a story of secret lunches and hotel rooms, location data from Keisha's phone that placed her exactly where she'd said she wasn't. I'd share mine, screenshots of Marcus's suddenly active Instagram DMs. I'd finally cracked his password. Keisha 615, her birthday. Photos I'd taken of him leaving the house in Cologne on his yard work days. The receipt I'd found in his wallet from a jewelry store I'd never received anything from. Look at this, Terrence had said during our third meeting, sliding his laptop across the table. My phone plan shows they're texting at 3 a.m. While I'm sleeping in Alabama and you're at the hospital. They're up talking like teenagers. I'd stared at the logs, hundreds of messages, watching the pattern emerge. Every Thursday night when I worked, the messages would spike. Every weekend when Terrence was home, they'd drop to nearly nothing. They'd created a whole relationship in the gaps of our lives, built something on the foundation of our absence. This one, I'd said, pointing to a cluster of messages from 2 weeks ago. This is the night Marcus told me he was working late. See the timestamp? He was texting her from 11 p.m. to 1 a.m. And this, Terrence had pulled up another screen, is the hotel charge from that same night. Room 412 at the W Midtown. They weren't just texting. We'd sat in silence, two people staring at the evidence of our spouse's betrayal displayed in cold data and transaction records. It should have hurt more than it did. Maybe I was becoming numb. Or maybe I was just finally accepting what I'd known deep down for months. My marriage had been over long before I'd heard Marcus's laugh through Keisha's basement door. My lawyer's sister says we have enough now, I'd told him. Enough to file for divorce, to prove infidelity, to protect ourselves financially. Is that what you want? Divorce? The question had caught me off guard. Did I want divorce? 3 months ago, the answer would have been an immediate no. Marcus and I were supposed to be forever. The couple who made it, who beat the odds, who proved that black love could be lasting and beautiful and real. But that couple had been a fiction. A performance we'd both committed to even as the foundation crumbled beneath us. I want my dignity back, I'd said finally. I want to look at myself in the mirror and not see a woman who let herself be played. If that means divorce, then yeah, that's what I want. Terrence had nodded slowly. Keisha told me last week she's not pregnant after all. Said it was a false positive. He'd laughed bitterly. I wonder if she was ever pregnant. Or if that was just another lie to keep me invested while she... He'd cut himself off, jaw clenched. I'm sorry, I'd said. Because what else could I say? We were both grieving marriages that had died without us noticing, mourning futures that would never exist. Don't be sorry. Be ready. He'd closed his laptop with decisive finality. Because I'm done gathering evidence. I'm done watching and waiting. I want to confront them. That had been 3 days ago. Since then, Monica and I had been planning the confrontation with the precision of a military operation. Not a screaming match, not a dramatic scene. Something calculated and controlled that would leave Marcus and Keisha with no room to manipulate or deny. You need to do it together. Monica had insisted during our strategy session at her apartment. You and Terrence confronting both of them at the same time. That way they can't coordinate stories, can't text each other to align their lies. Where? I'd asked. Our house, Keisha's? Neutral ground. Somewhere semi-public where they won't make a scene but private enough to have the conversation. She'd tapped her pen against her legal pad. What about that community center on DeKalb? They have meeting rooms you can rent by the hour. It had felt surreal, planning the end of my marriage like it was a business meeting. But maybe that's what it needed to be. Professional, documented, final. Now, sitting in my car outside that community center on a Wednesday evening, I felt the weight of what was about to happen. Terrence's truck was already in the parking lot. Inside that building, Marcus and Keisha were waiting, each thinking they'd been called there for different reasons. I'd told Marcus that Monica wanted to discuss some family legal matters and needed both of us present. He'd been annoyed but compliant. Terrence had told Keisha he'd found a marriage counselor who could meet on short notice, that he wanted to work on their relationship before his next trip to Alabama. She'd apparently been thrilled. Neither of them knew what was coming. I checked my reflection in the rearview mirror. I'd dressed carefully for this. Not my scrubs, not casual clothes, but the navy dress I usually saved for church. I wanted to look put together, in control. Wanted them to see that I wasn't falling apart. Wasn't the desperate wife clinging to a dead marriage. My phone buzzed. Monica, you've got this. Remember? Stay calm, stick to facts. Don't let them manipulate you into an emotional reaction. I'm 10 minutes away if you need me. I texted back a thumbs up, took a deep breath, and got out of the car. The community center was one of those renovated historic buildings Atlanta did so well. Old bones with modern updates, large windows and exposed brick. The meeting room Terrence had reserved was down a quiet hallway, away from the main activity areas. He was standing outside the door when I arrived, his expression grim but determined. They're both inside, separate corners of the room, haven't really acknowledged each other yet. This is going to be interesting. You ready? I asked, are you? I thought about the past month. The surveillance, the documentation, the nights lying awake next to a man who'd chosen someone else. The version of me who'd pulled up to Keisha's basement in shock and tears felt like a different person. I'd evolved into someone harder, someone who'd learned that sometimes love wasn't enough, that sometimes the kindest thing you could do for yourself was walk away. I'm ready, I said. We pushed open the door together. The room was set up conference style, long table, several chairs, fluorescent lighting that made everything feel slightly clinical. Marcus sat on one side, scrolling through his phone. Keisha sat on the other, looking at her nails. The distance between them was almost comical, given what we knew. They both looked up when we entered. Marcus's expression shifted from confusion to concern when he saw me with Terrence. Keisha's face went carefully blank. Jazz? What are you doing here? Marcus stood up. I thought this was about Monica's legal thing. Terrence? Keisha's voice was higher than normal. What's going on? Where's the counselor? Sit down, Terrence said, his voice carrying an authority I'd never heard from him before. Both of you. They hesitated, looking at each other for just a fraction of a second. A glance that confirmed everything, that showed the connection they thought was secret, then sat. I moved to stand next to Terrence at the head of the table. United front. We'd practiced this. There's no family legal matter, I said, my voice steady. And there's no marriage counselor. But there is going to be a conversation about marriage, specifically about the affair you two have been having for the past 4 months. The silence that followed was deafening. I watched Marcus's face cycle through emotions. Shock, denial, calculation. Watched Keisha's mask slip just slightly, revealing panic underneath. Jazz, what are you talking about? Marcus found his voice first, going straight for the denial play. Keisha and I are barely friends. This is don't! The word came out sharp enough to cut. I pulled out my phone, opened the photo gallery, and placed it on the table between them. Thursday, October 3rd, 9:47 p.m., Keisha's basement. I was sent home early for my shift. Marcus went pale. Keisha closed her eyes. "That's just the beginning," Terrence said, pulling out his own phone. "We have text logs. Hundreds of messages between your two phones, mostly between midnight and 3 a.m. We have credit card charges for hotel rooms. The W Midtown, the Georgian Terrace, that boutique place in Buckhead. We have location data placing you together when you both said you were somewhere else. We have 3 weeks of documentation," I continued. "Timestamps, photographs, receipts, messages. We have proof of a systematic, ongoing affair that you built in the margins of our lives while we were working to support our families." Marcus tried one more time. "Jazz, I can explain." "No," I cut him off. "You can't. There's no explanation that makes this okay. No excuse that justifies what you've done." I looked at Keisha. "Either of you." Keisha finally opened her eyes, but instead of shame, I saw defiance. "You're never home, Jazz. Marcus needed—" "Don't you dare put this on me," I said, my voice low and dangerous. "Don't you dare make his choices my fault. I was working, saving lives, supporting our household, while you two were playing house in your basement. And I was in Alabama," Terrence added, his voice tight with controlled anger. "Working 70-hour weeks so we could save for the house you wanted, the family you said you wanted to start. While you were texting my neighbor at 3 a.m. and charging hotel rooms to our joint credit card." Marcus and Keisha looked at each other again, and I saw it the moment they realized they'd been caught, truly caught, with no room for lies or manipulation. "What do you want?" Marcus asked finally, his voice defeated. "Divorce," I said simply. "Clean, quick, and on my terms. Monica's already drawn up the paperwork. You'll receive it tomorrow. And I want you out of my house," Terrence told Keisha. "I don't care where you go, but you have 72 hours to pack your things and leave." "You can't just kick me out," Keisha protested, finding her voice. "I have rights. Read your prenup," Terrence said coldly. "Infidelity voids a lot of those rights. My lawyers already reviewed it." The power had shifted. We stood at the head of the table, in control, while they sat there realizing the game was over. No more secret texts. No more Thursday night rendezvous. No more building a relationship on lies. Was any of it real? I asked Marcus, not because I needed to know, but because I needed him to face what he'd done. "Our marriage? The promises you made? Or was I always just the placeholder until something better came along?" He didn't answer. Couldn't answer. Because we both knew the truth. I'd been real. Our marriage had been real, at least for me. But he'd chosen to destroy it anyway. I turned to leave, Terrence beside me. "Jazz, wait." Marcus stood up, reaching for me. I stepped back. "Don't touch me. Don't call me. Don't try to explain or apologize. We're done. You made sure of that." We walked out of that conference room with our heads high, leaving our spouses to sit with the wreckage of what they'd destroyed. In the hallway, Terrence and I stopped, looked at each other. "That went better than expected," he said. "They didn't fight much. Because they knew we had them." He managed a small smile. "We did good, Jazz." We did. I felt exhausted and energized all at once, like after a particularly brutal shift at the hospital. "What now?" "Now we rebuild. Separately, but stronger," I nodded. He was right. This wasn't an ending, it was a beginning. The beginning of the rest of our lives. Lives where we weren't betrayed and lied to, where we weren't made to feel like we weren't enough. We were enough. We'd always been enough. They just hadn't deserved us. The week after the confrontation felt like living in the eye of a hurricane. Everything was calm on the surface, but I could feel the chaos swirling around me, waiting to hit. Marcus moved out 3 days later. He didn't fight it, didn't argue, just packed his clothes, his laptop, some personal items, and left. I watched from the kitchen window as he loaded boxes into his charger, methodical and silent. Part of me wanted to feel something, sadness, regret, even anger. But all I felt was relief. Relief that I didn't have to pretend anymore. Relief that I could finally sleep in my own bed without the weight of his lies pressing down on me. He'd tried to talk to me once, the morning after the confrontation, I'd been making coffee when he came downstairs, his eyes red-rimmed like he'd been crying. "Jazz, please. Can we just talk about this?" I'd kept my back to him, focused on the coffee pot like it was the most important thing in the world. "What's there to talk about, Marcus? You made your choice. Multiple times. For months. It was a mistake. A stupid, terrible mistake. But it doesn't have to end like this. We can go to counseling, work through it." "Work through what?" I'd finally turned to face him. "Work through you planning your affair around my work schedule? Work through you taking another woman to hotels while I was saving lives? Work through you lying to my face every single day for 4 months?" I'd shaken my head. "No, we're not working through anything. We're done. 12 years, Jazz. 12 years of marriage. That has to mean something." It did mean something. To me. I'd poured my coffee, surprised by how steady my hands were. But clearly it didn't mean enough to you. He'd left after that, and I hadn't seen him since. Monica said he'd been served with divorce papers at his office. He'd apparently moved into some corporate apartment in Buckhead. I wondered if Keisha was there with him, if they were finally living their fantasy now that it was out in the open. But I didn't ask. Didn't care enough to ask. Terrence had it worse. Keisha fought the eviction, threatened to contest the prenup, made noise about how cruel and sudden it all was. But Terrence stood firm. Monica had connected him with a colleague who specialized in infidelity cases, and between the documentation we'd gathered and the ironclad prenup Terrence's lawyer father had insisted on years ago, Keisha didn't have much ground to stand on. She moved out on day 71, cutting it close to the deadline. I'd watched from my porch as she loaded her car, her mother helping her carry boxes. She'd looked over at me once and I'd expected anger or shame. Instead, she'd just looked tired, defeated. Good, I'd thought. Now you know how it feels. Terrence and I still met for coffee, but the tone had shifted. We weren't co-conspirators anymore, weren't united by a common mission. Now we were just two wounded people trying to figure out how to move forward. "My lawyer says the divorce should be finalized in about 6 months. He'd told me over lattes at our usual spot. Keisha's not fighting it anymore. Think she realized she wasn't going to win?" "Marcus signed the papers yesterday," I'd said. "No contest. Monica thinks we'll be done even sooner. How are you feeling about it?" It was a question people kept asking. Monica, my coworkers, the few friends I'd told. How are you feeling? Like they expected me to be falling apart, to be a mess of tears and regrets. Honestly, I feel free, I'd said, and meant it. For the first time in months, I feel like I can breathe. Like I'm not carrying around this weight of trying to fix something that was already broken. Terrence had nodded slowly. "I get that. I'm angry. God, I'm so angry, but I'm also relieved." "Does that make sense?" Perfect sense. We'd sat in comfortable silence for a moment, two survivors of the same shipwreck, floating separately but within sight of each other. "You ever wonder if we could have prevented it?" He'd asked. "If we'd been different people, done different things?" "I used to," I'd admitted. Spent the first week analyzing every decision I'd made, every shift I'd picked up, every dinner I'd missed. Wondering if I'd driven him away. I'd looked at Terrence, but then I realized nothing I did gave him permission to cheat. Nothing you did gave Keisha permission to betray you. They made choices, adult choices, and now they get to live with the consequences. Monica teach you that? Living through it taught me that. Work became my sanctuary. At Grady Memorial, I wasn't the woman whose husband cheated. I was just Jazz. The nurse who could start an IV in a rolling vein, who stayed calm during traumas, who remembered every patient's name. My coworkers knew something had happened. The wedding ring disappearing from my finger was a pretty clear sign. But they didn't pry. They just made sure I wasn't working alone on the hard nights, that someone was always nearby if I needed to talk. Angela, the charge nurse, pulled me aside one evening during a rare lull. "You doing okay, honey? And don't give me the 'I'm fine' line. I've known you too long." I'd considered brushing her off, keeping up the strong facade, but Angela had been through her own divorce years ago. She understood. "I'm better than I was," I'd said. "Some days are harder than others. But I'm getting there. That's all you can do. Get through one day at a time." She'd squeezed my shoulder. "And Jazz? What he did? That's on him, not you. Don't carry his shame." Those words had stayed with me, playing on repeat during the moments when doubt crept in, when I wondered if I'd been too cold, too calculating in how I'd handled the confrontation, when I questioned whether I should have fought harder for my marriage instead of walking away. But then I'd remember the photos. The text logs, the hotel receipts, the systematic way Marcus and Keisha had built their affair in the margins of our lives, and I'd know I'd made the right choice. Monica threw me a divorce party 2 weeks after Marcus moved out. Nothing big, just her, me, and 2 of my closest friends from nursing school at her apartment with wine and takeout. To Jazz, Monica had said, raising her glass, who proved that being strong doesn't mean staying. Sometimes it means having the courage to walk away. To new beginnings, I'd added, clinking my glass against theirs. We'd spent the evening talking about everything except Marcus and Keisha. My friends had caught me up on their lives, babies and promotions and vacations. Normal things, happy things, reminders that life existed beyond the wreckage of my marriage. You seem different, my friend Tasha had observed as the night wound down. Lighter somehow, more yourself. I feel more myself, I'd realized as I said it. I didn't notice how much of me I'd lost trying to hold together something that was already falling apart. It's like I can finally just be. That's what freedom looks like, Monica had said softly. The night had ended with hugs and promises to do it again soon, and I'd driven home feeling genuinely happy for the first time in months. Not the manic happiness that comes from denial, but something deeper. Peace. The house felt different now without Marcus in it. Bigger somehow, more mine. I'd started rearranging things, moved furniture, took down the pictures of us that had lined the hallway, repainted the bedroom a soft sage green that I'd always wanted but he'd vetoed. Each small change felt like reclaiming territory, like putting my stamp on a space that had felt like a museum to our failed marriage. One evening, I was standing in the kitchen, the same spot where I'd stood watching Marcus load his car, when my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Jazz Turner? A woman's voice, professional, speaking. This is Dr. Reeves from Emory Hospital. I'm calling about your application for the Advanced Trauma Certification Program. I'd almost forgotten. I'd applied months ago, back when things with Marcus were already falling apart, but I hadn't admitted it yet. Back when I was throwing myself into work to avoid going home. Yes? My heart started beating faster. I'm pleased to inform you that you've been accepted into the program. It starts in January. Congratulations. I'd thanked her, taken down the details, hung up. Then I'd stood there in my kitchen, in my house, in my life, and smiled. Really smiled. This was what moving forward looked like. Not forgetting what happened, not pretending it didn't hurt, but choosing to build something new from the rubble. Choosing to invest in myself the way I'd once invested in a marriage that wasn't worth saving. I texted Monica. Got into the Emory program. Her response was immediate. That's my sister. Celebration dinner this weekend. My treat. Then I texted Terrence. Good news today. Accepted into Advanced Trauma Cert at Emory. That's amazing, Jazz. You deserve it. All the good things. I set my phone down and looked around my house, my space, my sanctuary, my new beginning. The past 4 months had been the hardest of my life. The betrayal, the investigation, the confrontation, the divorce. It had all nearly broken me, but nearly wasn't the same as actually. I'd survived. More than survived. I'd grown stronger. I'd learned that I could trust my instincts, that I could be strategic when I needed to be, that I could walk away from something that was hurting me even when it was hard. Marcus had thought he knew me. Thought I was the accommodating wife who would always be there, always forgive, always put everyone else first. He'd built his affair on that assumption. He'd been wrong. I wasn't that woman anymore. Maybe I never had been. Maybe she'd just been a role I was playing, trying to be what I thought a good wife should be. The real Jazz, the one standing in this kitchen right now, was stronger than that. Braver than that, worth more than that, and she was just getting started. 6 months after the confrontation, I stood in my bathroom getting ready for my first day of the Advanced Trauma Certification Program at Emory. The woman staring back at me from the mirror was familiar, but different. Same brown eyes, same dark skin, same natural hair now worn in a twist out instead of the perpetual bun. but something fundamental had shifted. There was a steadiness in my gaze that hadn't been there before. A quiet confidence that came from surviving something you weren't sure you'd survive. My phone buzzed with a text from Monica. First day. You're going to kill it. Coffee after? Definitely, I typed back. Need to tell you about something. The divorce had been finalized 3 weeks ago. I'd gone to the courthouse with Monica, signed the papers, and walked out legally single for the first time in 12 years. Marcus hadn't shown up. His lawyer handled everything remotely. I'd heard through mutual friends that he and Keisha had tried to make it work for about 2 months after everything exploded. Apparently, when you build a relationship on sneaking around and stolen moments, it loses its appeal when it becomes your everyday reality. They'd split up sometime around Christmas. I didn't feel vindicated by that news. Didn't feel much of anything, actually. They'd made their choices, faced their consequences, and now we were all moving forward separately. That was enough. Terrence had sold his house in March and moved to a condo downtown. We still texted occasionally, friendly check-ins, updates on our lives. He'd started dating someone new, a woman he'd met through his engineering firm. She's stable, he'd told me during our last coffee meeting. Present, honest. All the things I didn't know I needed until I didn't have them. I was happy for him. Happy that he'd found a way to trust again, to open himself up to possibility after everything. As for me, I wasn't dating. Wasn't even thinking about it. This season of my life was about rediscovering who Jazz Turner was outside of being someone's wife, outside of trying to hold together a marriage that was already dead. I was learning to enjoy my own company, to fill my house with things I loved, to make decisions based solely on what I wanted. The freedom was intoxicating. I'd kept the house. Marcus hadn't fought me on it. Monica had negotiated a settlement that was fair but firm. I got the house, my retirement account stayed untouched, and we split everything else down the middle. Marcus paid the first 6 months of mortgage as part of the agreement, giving me time to refinance in my name alone. Walking through rooms that were now entirely mine still gave me a thrill. I'd turned Marcus's old office into a reading nook. Floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, a comfortable chair by the window, soft lighting. It was my favorite space in the house, the place I went to decompress after long shifts, to study for my certification, to just exist without performance or pretense. The ER staff had thrown me a small celebration when I'd gotten accepted into the Emory program. Angela had given a speech about resilience and growth that had me tearing up, and the whole team had signed a card with messages of support. "You're going to change lives," one of the surgical residents had written. "You already have." That's what I wanted to focus on. The lives I could change. The difference I could make. Not the marriage I'd lost, but the purpose I'd found. My first class at Emory was everything I'd hoped for and more. Advanced techniques, cutting-edge protocols, instructors who'd seen and done things I could only imagine. I took notes frantically, asked questions, felt my brain light up in ways it hadn't since nursing school. This was where I was supposed to be. This was what I was meant to do. During the lunch break, I sat in the cafeteria scrolling through my phone when a text came through from a number I didn't recognize. "Hey Jazz, this is Marcus. I know I don't have the right to reach out, but I wanted you to know I'm sorry. For everything. You deserved better than what I gave you. I hope you're doing well." I stared at the message for a long moment. 6 months ago, this text would have wrecked me, would have opened wounds that were just starting to heal, would have sent me into a spiral of anger and hurt and what-ifs. Now, it just felt irrelevant. I didn't respond. Didn't block him either. Just closed the message and went back to my lunch. His apology, his guilt, his regrets, they weren't mine to carry anymore. I'd spent enough time bearing the weight of his choices. He could carry his own burden now. That evening, I met Monica at our favorite wine bar in Virginia Highland. Ironically, the same place Marcus had taken Keisha, according to that credit card receipt I'd found months ago. We'd reclaimed it, made it ours. Another small victory. "So what did you need to tell me?" Monica asked after we'd ordered. I took a breath. "I've been thinking about selling the house." Her eyebrows went up. "Really? I thought you loved that house." "I do, but..." I struggled to find the right words. "It's still full of ghosts, you know? Memories of who I was when I lived there with Marcus. I've done so much work to move forward. but sometimes I walk through those rooms and I can still feel the weight of it all. Monica nodded slowly. So you want a fresh start? Completely new? Yeah, maybe a condo closer to Emory. Something smaller, more manageable, something that's mine from the beginning. I swirled my wine. Is that crazy? Running away? It's not running away if you're running towards something better, Monica said firmly. And Jazz? You've earned the right to make whatever choices feel right for you. No one gets to judge that. We talked through the logistics, market value, timing, what I wanted in a new place. Monica, ever the practical lawyer, was already making lists and connections, offering to help me find a realtor. You know what I'm proud of? She said as the evening wound down. How you handled all of this. You could have fallen apart. A lot of women would have, but you didn't. You got strategic, you protected yourself, and you came out stronger. I had a good teacher, I said, raising my glass to her. Nah. She clinked her glass against mine. You had it in you all along. You just needed a reason to let it out. Walking to my car later, I thought about the woman I'd been 6 months ago. The one who'd stood frozen outside Keisha's basement. Hearing her husband laugh, feeling her world collapse. That woman had felt so small, so powerless, so invisible. The woman I was now knew better. Knew that power came from within, that strength was a choice, that visibility meant being seen by yourself first. My phone buzzed with a text from Terrence. Heard through the grapevine that Marcus reached out to you today. You okay? I smiled. Even months later, we still looked out for each other. I'm good. More than good, actually. His apology doesn't change anything. Good. You deserve to move forward without looking back. You too. How's the new relationship going? Really well. Taking it slow, but it feels right. She's meeting my parents next week. That's huge. Happy for you, thanks, Jazz, for everything. You know, if you hadn't told me about Keisha, I might still be living that lie. We saved each other, I typed back. That's what survivors do. I drove home through Atlanta streets that felt different now. More familiar, more mine. The city lights reflected off wet pavement from an earlier rain, creating patterns that looked almost artistic. I thought about all the nights I'd driven these same streets coming home from the hospital, exhausted and heartsick, feeling like my life was spinning out of control. Now I was driving home to a house I was choosing to leave, to a future I was actively building, to a life that was finally, completely mine. The house was dark when I pulled up. Just the porch light I'd left on creating a warm glow. I sat in my car for a moment, looking at it. This structure that had held so much pain and transformation. When I sold it, someone else would fill it with their own memories, their own dreams. They'd never know about the marriage that had died within its walls, about the woman who'd been broken and rebuilt there. That was okay. Those stories were mine to carry, mine to learn from, and I'd learned so much. I'd learned that loving someone didn't mean tolerating their betrayal, that being strong sometimes meant walking away, that you could survive something that felt unsurvivable, that endings could be beginnings if you had the courage to see them that way. I'd learned that I was enough. Not because someone chose me, but because I chose myself. Inside, I made tea and curled up in my reading nook with a textbook for my certification program. The house was quiet except for the sound of pages turning and the occasional siren in the distance. Familiar sounds of the life I'd built from the ruins of what came before. My phone sat on the side table. Marcus's message still unread in the preview. Tomorrow I'd delete it. Tonight, I'd just let it exist as proof that I'd moved beyond needing closure from him. I'd given that to myself. Outside my window, Atlanta glowed with possibility. Somewhere in this city, Marcus and Keisha were living with their choices. Terrence was building something new with someone who deserved his trust. Monica was probably still working, fighting for women who needed an advocate. And me, I was exactly where I needed to be, in my house that would soon be someone else's house, in my life that was finally, authentically mine, in my skin, comfortable and whole and ready for whatever came next. The Jazz who'd discovered her husband's affair that Thursday night would barely recognize the woman I'd become. That woman had been defined by her relationships, by her role as wife and caretaker. She'd been so busy taking care of everyone else that she'd forgotten to take care of herself.